amend the main motion that the recommendation to work on demerits related to trap visitation exceeding 48 hours over the prescription include a clarification as to how that will be applied. I think everyone understands my intent.
I would second that motion. I think that's fair enough.
Yes.
I would accept that as an amendment to the main motion as well.
He would accept that as amendment to the main motion. So
I would.
okay, so we have acceptance to the main motion, and that's on the increase from 3 to 6 in excess of 48 hours past the legal limit of time. Okay. Everybody clear on the motion? Any further discussion?
12 demerit.
What's that?
12 demerit point. And are we voting on these? I'm confused there. We were,
The motion, as I understood
I have
it,
both of
includes both of them.
Both of them.
And what we're doing is we've just, I've accepted, and I think Commissioner Macbeth accepted a friendly amendment of sorts to include a clarification on how those citations occur, how the violations are recorded.
but it includes
It includes the change of 6 to 12. It's still the main motion. Any further discussion? Okay, I'm going to call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Macbeth, Morai, Rob, Drew, McNitch, Lane, or ayes. Nays?
Aye.
Bliss and Wallace. Okay, motion passed.
And I'll just clarify switching. I mean, I'm still uncomfortable with the 12, but I understand this is going to come back. It's going to go back through the cabs. So I will definitely reserve my right to change that if I come up with more questions.
Okay, now we've made it through the easy of the hard parts. Now we're going to get to the maps and the time frame. And like I stated before, the committee put in a ton of time on this, and I would like to Commissioner Drew.
I guess before we go to this, and I guess the committee provided direction to staff initially to come back with options to work on in regards to both trapper education and public education at this meeting, and with the rollover in staff and everything, I understand logistically we weren't able to make that happen, but are you planning on handling the education component of this too? Because I would like
Correct.
to see that endorsed or
Yes.
discussed.
Yes,
Okay.
that'll be after this.
Okay.
Or, yeah, that'll be after this, because then we'll know what education we need to do. With the amount of work and the amount of man hours and time that the department's put in, the public has attended meetings and the committee has put in on this, I won't make the motion, but I would hope that the original motion would be to support what the committee brought forward. If that fails, we can keep trying from there. So we can do the maps and the time frame. Let's see if we can get a motion north-south and time frame to see if we can agree on what the committee has put together.
Mr. Chairman, maybe I'd further suggest that I won't support it, but maybe just to see where the commission's at with regards to the 96 hours outside of these areas. That's kind of where we started before,
Okay.
and it seemed to get us off the schneid one time before. I don't know if it's the way to go or not, but it's a suggestion.
Yeah, we did address everything outside of the map, keeping it 96 hours. So let's start with everything outside of the map. Do you have a motion for that, Dave? Or Commissioner Bliss?
I just have a question. If Commissioner Macbeth is right, the SB 213 didn't direct us to basically discuss the stuff outside of the map. It was just around the congested areas. Is it something that we have to do?
No, but I think it's a good thing to say that we went on the record as discussing it statewide.
And I guess just to be clear, I think it said to consider visitation, and in that consideration, to take into account population in close proximity to heavily used areas.
And I think that Mr. Newton is going to lean forward and tell us that it's important that as a commission, we reference close proximity, populated, heavily used areas, and if we're considering that, if our considerations have included that these areas are not part of that consideration, then that's where we're at. We should recognize that.
Yes. So do you have a,
Do I?
I just want to, just to clarify, SB 213 requires the commission to pass a regulation that sets the visitation time. It then further states that 96 hours is your ceiling. But you're required to set it for everywhere in the state on the way this statute reads, just so you're clear on what your mandate is. You have to do something for all parts of the state. Whether that's 96 hours, some other number, they left to your discretion, but you have to do something for the whole state.
and we already did the 96-hour statewide at a prior commission meeting because we had nothing on the books. Once they took the NRS off, we had no NAC to go forward, so it was open.
Correct.
So we took that action, made it 96 hours statewide. But I think it'd be prudent if we make a motion on the 96 hours statewide and the justification for 96 hours statewide to say we considered it through the process. Instead of just looking at the congested areas, it was a consideration of the committee.
Right, because the first thing that you did was more or less a stopgap measure.
Correct.
This is your considered measure
That's right.
for
Correct.
the state.
Correct. Commissioner McNish, do you have a motion?
No, because I wouldn't support my motion.
Okay. I have a,
Different reasons. This is where it gets complicated. This is where you guys are going to hear some of the complexities of this thing. We're getting into the nuts and bolts right now, so.
I need to make this thing move forward.
If I were to make a motion, okay, I'll make the motion. I can always vote against it. I would make a motion to accept outside of, and I apologize, I don't have my handy dandy. You gonna do it? Wouldn't be the first time I made a motion and voted against it, so.
I'll give it a stab and you can tell me where I get it wrong. All right. So I would make a motion to uphold the committee's recommendation to maintain the 96-hour trap check in areas outside of hunt management units or areas, 26, 28, 19, 2, and 29.
I will second that, just to keep this going, with an amendment that it take the language out of the original motion to keep the 96 hours statewide in recognition of the far-reaching places in Nevada. Take that language that was in the original motion from Elko.
Understood. The intent would be to incorporate all the reasons defined in the committee's recommendation, including consideration of proximity to populated and heavily used areas.
Commissioner Macbeth.
I guess I got a little heartburn with the reference to the units. And I'm just wondering, it's almost like you're putting the cart before a horse in some respects, that we haven't defined what we're going to define as, populated and heavily used. So maybe if you're going to do it this way, you just make a general reference to whatever we determine to be populated and heavily used rather than specific units.
And Commissioner Macbeth, that's a good point. And what we had to do as the committee is this was the only place we could get started. We were having a hard time getting started, so we started here, putting the cart before the horse a little bit. And after we came to some decisions on the other areas, north and south, then we went back and we had to make one last motion that said, okay, those areas in units 26, 28, 19, 2, and 29 that were not incorporated as part of these more specific areas are 96 hours. So I think we get there either way. So.
Okay.
Okay. Any further discussion? Commissioner Maury.
Okay, could you please repeat the motion?
Yikes. So the motion, at least in intent, is for the commission to uphold the committee's recommendation to leave the visitation time at 96 hours for those wildlife management areas outside of areas 26, 28, 19, 2, and 29, which essentially leaves open those areas depicted on the map.
Incorporating the language of justification from the Elko meeting.
Correct.
Okay, we all clear? All right, I'm gonna call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed?
Nay.
Okay, McNitch and Lane, nays.
And I want to clarify one more time, I don't disagree with the close proximity, heavily populated, heavily used. I think there's legitimate reasons why that isn't the case in most of those areas, or if not all of them. But I do believe that 96 hours is just a little too long, and that's just.
Okay. Now, can we get to the, what if we do a motion to cover calendar day? And get that and see if we're going to land on calendar day, and then we can discuss the maps. Seeing nobody jumping up, I'm going to get this moving. I make a motion that we accept calendar day for the areas shaded on the maps in Washoe, Douglas, Carson City, and Clark County.
Mr. Chairman, for purposes of discussion, I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to have calendar day considered for areas within the shaded areas on the maps. Commissioner Macbeth.
And doesn't that by definition then bring in the maps?
By definition, it does, yes.
Yeah, then I can't support that. I wasn't going to support calendar day anyway, so.
But it brings in the maps just on the hours, but we haven't voted on the maps yet. The way my motion reads, is that clear enough for you, Mr. Newton, that I'm voting on the time frame for the area within the maps, but we haven't decided that the area within the map is our final area that we're going to consider? Because I didn't make a motion to say this is my final map.
We're just trying to decide. I think the way I'm understanding Commissioner Robin, what I seconded was to have a discussion and to determine, are we going to use calendar days or are we going to use hours? That's
Yes.
all that it's as simple as that. So that's where.
As I understood your motion, you were setting one calendar day for the shaded areas on the Clark County and Washoe Carson City area map.
Yes.
So that by definition sets the
No, I think.
those shaded areas at one calendar day visitation. I don't think you can address the calendar day issue
Separate.
prior to addressing the maps,
Okay.
in the way that you've stated
Yeah.
the motion.
I'll remove my second because that
I'll
wasn't
remove
my
it.
understanding.
Okay.
I don't think that was
Yeah.
Jack's
And-
intent either. But
I
No.
don't either, but I think if we took a quick poll around the room,
Yeah.
I'm probably closer
Yeah.
than what you guys heard.
Yeah.
And I'll just want to reiterate, the time period for me is dependent upon the size of the area. And so I definitely would not support anything that has to do with the time until I know what the area is.
Okay. Does somebody have anything to go forward with? Because I'll make another motion. What's that? Okay. You got it, Dave?
Yeah, so Mr. Chairman, to get the ball rolling, I'll make a motion that we accept the map proposed for the short and track visitation areas in northern Nevada as depicted on the map for areas area 19 and area, I guess that's it for those, just those two. And 29. Oh, excuse me, the line does go down, it is just 19. Because the areas depicted is area 19, management area 19. So
But it's not all 19 because
not
part of
all.
195 is not included in.
As proposed on
Thank you.
the map, which included most of Area 19, as described in
Okay. Did we get a second? We don't have to all second it, so we can get going. So, any further discussion on the Northern Nevada map? We're only talking the Northern Nevada map at this point. Commissioner Drew.
First, I'll ask a question, and I guess that question would be, would those portions of hunt, or game management units 2, 19, and 29 not shaded on the map in the committee recommendation by default go back to 96 then, similar to the committee recommendation?
We haven't got to that point, but I think that that's a bridge that we would cross as we move forward.
So you're anticipating a future motion on that?
I'm expecting a future motion.
Okay, then I guess here's my statement on the current motion. In attending the Douglas CAB meeting, they were opposed to having any change in Douglas County. And I think part of that is Douglas County doesn't feel that they are necessarily an urbanized area. There are some high-use areas, and most of those, let me put it this way, any urbanized portion of Douglas County is probably 90+% private. And the committee recommendation, I think this is an important distinction, exempts private property. In those areas that are heavily used, that are on public lands, and a lot of those areas, especially on the western front, those trails have pet restrictions, and overall, so that's my specific qualm with 192, but overall, I dissented on this motion in the committee. I still think there's the potential that it creates more conflicts than it resolves, and so then, in general, for those two reasons, one specific, one general, I'll be opposed to the motion.
And the committee's recommendation was to exempt private property from that. Would you accept that as an amendment?
From the 24-hour check, that's
Yes,
my understanding.
from the calendar day check,
From-
yes.
Excuse me, from whatever the, yes.
From
And
the
this does include a calendar day check as part of the motion, I
Yeah.
think.
Yes.
I think so. I think that was the intent, was to, I think that was the motion that was made. A calendar day trap check for the committee. So that's the motion, and I made the motion to get the ball rolling here, to have the conversation. So if we want to clear up the calendar day thing, we can. If there's issues of Commissioner Drew's that we want to address, we can do that. We can take a vote and start from scratch.
Do we want to just vote on the map and then get to the calendar day portion? We got to break it out or we're not going to get
I
anywhere.
think what I'm hearing from Commissioner Macbeth is that he needs that conversation, that discussion on the calendar day versus hours, in order to understand where he stands on maps.
So
And that's what I just tried to do and I couldn't get there because
Well, no, but I think we've got a map on the table for him to consider now as part of that conversation. I
Okay.
think is the key. I don't mean to speak for you, Commissioner.
No, that is exactly right.
So
Whatever the motion was on the map, I can tell you the way this map is written right now, I'm gonna vote against it, but yeah, but if the committee then, I mean, if the commission approves this map, then then the next issue for me is the time period.
So my suggestion is we should take a vote on the motion that's on the table,
on the map.
and then we've officially addressed the recommendation from the committee.
Okay.
We can start where we need to, and we can go from there.
Okay, so there's a motion on the map on the table. Any further discussion?
But I guess I got to put, if it's motion from the committee, is it considering the calendar day
Yes.
deal?
It says one calendar day is the, I'm simply taking the recommendation from the committee and bringing it to the commission so that we can be clear on whether we're supporting what the committee did or not. And hey, and just, from my understanding, I know, we hear about this, the committee put in 1 billion hours. We did. Staff put in 1 billion hours. I mean, there's a lot of hours into this thing. But it's not a personal thing for me in that sense. It's not a function of we have to support the committee. I want what's right, and if it takes us to have bigger, broader conversations at this level, I'm good. So,
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. And it's Dave, aye. Karen. Okay, all those opposed? Okay. Macbeth, Wallace, Morai, Drew, Bliss.
No.
Commissioner Lane?
Can we, before we go, I guess my question is procedurally, are we proposing to go through all of the motions of the committee before we go back and split out the map from the time? Or can we now make a motion to accept the map without the time?
I think that'd be cleaner, just to stay on the same map. But
Yeah.
it's the chairman's call.
Yeah, let's stay on the same map. We gotta get, well, we haven't addressed anything Southern Nevada, and I know that's Karen. Do you have a motion you would like to bring forward for Southern Nevada and see where it goes, and then we can,
Mr. Chairman, I think that we should stay on this map. We've made one motion that's failed
okay,
on this map. I think what my suggestion would be that we now take a look at the map without the time frame. So, but we're not, so we've kind of moved away from the committee's motions. But but I think we ought to stay on this map and try to move forward. That, procedurally, that's the way I would go.
okay. So,
So I guess my question to the commission is then, the expectation, I mean, it's, we have close proximity to heavily used or populated areas. And if the commission feels that this area defined in whole or in part doesn't meet that, then I think that that's one of the first thing that we should probably talk about. And see, this is where it's hard. I think Commissioner Macbeth is starting to go through what we went through. There's so many variables, and you almost and it's so hard to pull them all together to make a decision. And we're all different. And this is what we experienced, and it's a real challenge. So I feel your pain right away, and I've had time to kind of ease my pain. You just are getting it all today. So I don't know how to help that other than to just kind of try to keep talking and hope something breaks loose a little bit. I guess we've been through this, so it's not unexpected or new. That's for sure.
can we go down through the commissioners and say why they didn't support? I know why I supported it, but is it the size of the area, was it the time frame? Commissioner Bliss, was it size, area, or time frame that you didn't vote on the motion?
Time frame.
Commissioner Drew, size of area or time frame?
Probably both for me.
Okay, Commissioner Morai, size of map or time frame?
Probably both, in a certain sense. The time frame is the main issue. In the Clark County map, there's a clearly defined no firearm discharge area. And on this map, it is not.
And we ran into that in our last committee meeting, or in our last committee that dealt with the last legislation. And these, you have Carson, Washoe, and Douglas, and each one of them have different firearm setbacks. Douglas County is, 500 feet from a road? Washoe County is like a mile from a residence. There is no, this is one area, but there's 3 counties and they all have very different regulations, and that's why we struggled in the north and the south, is because nothing's uniform per county. So it really becomes an issue at that point. That's why we don't have a yellow, and if we had a yellow one up here, it would go way out into the 021, 022, but those are primarily private property areas. Douglas County, where Commissioner Drew was talking about it, primarily private property. But I got to keep going down the line. Commissioner Wallace, the reason you didn't support it?
It's a little bit of both, Mr. Chairman. I'm uncomfortable with the map, probably more for the reasons that Commissioner Drew may be, because I'm not familiar with these areas, and he pretty much lives there, and if he's got some issues with it, I'm a little uncomfortable on that, and the time frame.
Commissioner Macbeth?
Definitely both for me.
Okay, so that cleared it up.
So
We
let
got-
me ask this question, if I could, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
if there's a change in visitation, the proposal from 24 to, just for purposes of discussion, to 48, how much does the area play into, how much is the area a problem now?
48 with an exemption for private property holders.
So now I guess I'd ask commissioners that same question.
I'll start. I'm not going to be shy.
You haven't been.
Yeah. Been pretty direct. I must be getting hungry or something. I would be much more comfortable if 192 were dropped in its entirety. I would be much more comfortable if there was an exemption for box or cage traps. And I think that at least alleviates some of the concern I have about the potential for going more to instant kill traps, which could exacerbate our conflict problems. And overall, and I've said this from the beginning, I'm not convinced that this is the right tool to avoid these conflicts. I think there might be a better way to do it. And so I think those two things would make me more comfortable. I still don't know if I'm at the point where I'm willing to accept that, but those are the things that would make me more comfortable with what we're talking about.
And if I could, Mr. Chairman, I have to agree with the unintended consequences. And I think that, I'm not so worried about the take and, because I think that some of that stuff kind of plays out. We put a whole bunch of trappers into an area and all the animals are going to get trapped out or something. I think that finds its balance a little bit. But I definitely share your concern with the potential for, lethal traps to be used. And it's something that I've turned around in my head too, is, we don't want to force something like that to happen. So I have to admit, I'm a little bit in that area, even though I supported the original motion. I definitely share that concern.
Okay. Do we want to try a motion with an extended period of time to drop in Douglas County?
Well, maybe I'll talk about the unthinkable, since Commissioner Drew was so bold. I haven't been real shy either. It's gone around in my mind, and I said it before, that I think that there's some applicability with the visitation frequency to try to manage trappers. Okay, do I think it's the best tool? Not really. I think that there are other tools, but that's not what SB 213 asked us to do. SB 213 boxed us in with visitation frequency, and that's where it kind of pushed us. So this committee never really had a conversation on restricting the types of traps that could be used, or setbacks, just physical setbacks instead of visitation frequencies to manage those things. So I don't know where that leaves us. If we're struggling to find areas, find some common ground, and find 5 votes to push something through, or whatever it is that we would call it, I don't know. I certainly don't think taking things back to the committee is the answer. So not necessarily anyway. So I have to. I throw that out there, that maybe there are other tools that need to be considered as part of that conversation, and I think that's what Commissioner Drew was kind of trying to say.
Commissioner Moore?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to